Welcome back to the Bluechip Breakdown, Vols fans. I'm your host, Bull, and in today's video, we'll be looking at 24/7 Sports' new top 10 offensive line rankings for college football. Now, we have looked before at On3's top 10 that Tennessee did make it in. Tennessee made it into 24/7 Sports' top 10 as well. Of course, as volunteer fans, we should be very excited about this. We'll take a look at the differences between both of those lists, and then I'll also tell you what I think about each individual player on our offensive line in the one and in the two deep. So, as always, please make sure to like and subscribe. Let's go ahead and jump into it. All right, so first and foremost, On3's top 10 ranking is going to be on the left, and then 24/7 Sports will be on the right. So On3 has LSU at 1, Texas at 2, Georgia's at 3, Alabama's at 4, Oklahoma State, Oregon, Mizzou, Miami, Tennessee, and Ole Miss. And that's just for those of y'all that might just be listening to it and don't have time to look at the screen. I'll just read it off for you. 24/7 Sports has Oklahoma State at number 1, LSU, Georgia, Texas, Tennessee, Alabama, Ole Miss, Missouri, Oregon, and then Miami. So the most important thing that kind of stood out to me between both of these lists is that LSU, Texas, Georgia, and Oklahoma State are consistently in the top 10 on both of these two lists. So we can probably expect them to have a really good offensive line, at least with some veteran depth. Now, the other thing that's going to be important for us to note is that Tennessee was at number 5 for 24/7 Sports, and then we're number 9 on 3, which gives us an average ranking between these two sites of number 7. And I think that that's a pretty decent rank. I mean, obviously, it's top 10, but we're kind of like on the bottom half of the top 10, if that's the way that you want to look at it. Now, I will say this, okay, because we've said it before, but I'm going to say it again. These analysts do not know each individual team on a, more intricate or intimate type of a level the way that some of the insiders for each individual program is going to know them. So I always take this stuff with kind of a grain of salt, but it is interesting that it's, the exact same teams on both of these lists. They just kind of flip-flop in some different spots. I think that Tennessee for sure is a top 10 offensive line. A whole lot of veteran depth is coming back. And the most interesting thing to me is that we're in the top 10 with the question marks that we have at left guard. We have no idea who the starting left guard is going to be. At least, I don't know. I don't think any of the insiders are too sure about it. Now, maybe the coaches have a better idea. I mean, I would hope that they do. I don't think they have a set starter. That's my whole point. We're still fighting for a starter at that position. I think that speaks to the depth of this team. Let's go ahead and pull up this depth chart. And starting off at left tackle, we have Big Lance Hurd. That's a transfer from LSU that everyone's so excited about. 6'6", 340 pounds, something crazy like that. Number 1 offensive lineman coming out of high school in the class of 2023. Huge to pick him up. I think he's going to be great as a pass blocker to protect Nico's blindside without question. But what I love about his game is that he's not afraid to move bodies. Like, he's got that bully ball mentality to him. He's got that dog to him. And we're going to need that. We'll be talking a little bit more about that as we go through with this video. But at left guard, I have Sham Umarov. Some people have, Andre Carrick, who I actually have at the second string here. Some people have Jackson Lampley. We don't know who's going to win this spot right here. We just talked about it. But I think that Sham looks the best. Whenever we're talking about pass protection, he looks really, really good, looks really solid. And then also, just as a run blocker, I just think that he shows a lot more upside. The most consistent thing that you'll hear me talk about with all the starters, really all of our offensive linemen, maybe kind of outside of one, is going to be the simple fact that we are going to look really good in run blocking this season, at least if the starters are going to be the way that I am projecting them to be. Now at center, we all know it's going to be Cooper Mays as the starter. I think that he has, a whole lot of upside, right? Like, obviously, he's played for so long. He's the heart and soul of this offensive line, and really maybe even of this offense, maybe like right outside of Nico. They're like 1A and 1B. He's going to set the tempo. He's really going to set the pace. Him and Nico are going to work in concert to do that. But he's going to identify all of the, fronts and everything like that for our line. So he's very important. He's probably the most important player on the offensive line. I wouldn't say that he's the best player. I think that would go to Lance Hurd, but he is going to be the most important. So it's going to be critical for him to stay healthy. And this is a send-off season for him. So we are projecting that he's going to, try to work himself up to be a draft pick. And I think that he's definitely going to do that this season. Now, on to the right guard, I have Javonte Spraggins. He's another one that I think is absolutely phenomenal in run support. He's a guy that can most definitely move bodies. We've seen that a lot with him, but he's great in pass protection as well. He's another one, just like everybody else up on this front. They're all dogs. They all want to prove a point. And, he's going to be really special. Again, this is a send-off season for him, just like it is for Cooper Mays. And the next player at right tackle, John Campbell. And John Campbell is one that we saw a lot last year playing at left tackle, right? Like, we saw him driving bodies. I think it was versus Virginia or something, where he's driving people all the way, through the tunnel. It's stuff like that that you love to see. Now we have two tackles that play with that nastiness, with that edge, that can move bodies. And I'm not talking a whole lot about pass protection because I'm just going to tell you this. I think that they're all going to be really good at that. The only player that I would say might not be the best as far as a run blocker is going to be Cooper Mays. And I know that might be a shock to some of y'all. He just doesn't do as much of the body movement, but because he's going to have two very strong guards next to him, I believe in Shem Umarov and Spraggs, now I think that we can see him, getting a little bit more movement on some of these double teams. He does a really good job of getting up to the second level, though. I'm not saying he's a bad run blocker. I'm just saying that he might actually be the weakest run blocker out of all of our starting linemen this season. And that's not necessarily a knock on him, but I'm just telling you how good this offensive line is going to be in run blocking. So again, we do want to make sure that we're protecting Nico. That's pretty much going without question for the starting group. But why I'm so excited about these starters is what they can do in run blocking. That's why I keep on harping on that. That's going to be very, very important to our team this season. I'll talk a little bit more about that once I get done with the two deep. So back to left tackle, we have Dane Davis. He's played for a long time. He's like a fifth or sixth year senior. He's a swing tackle. He can play anywhere on this offensive line. I just have him at left tackle because if, God forbid, something happens, right? Like I think that I think that he will be the first left tackle to come in behind Lance Hurd. That's the way that I see it. Now, there is also a possibility that a guy like John Campbell would move over and play at left tackle, and then we'll put Dane Davis at right tackle. We'll see. But I actually think that Dane Davis will be another player kind of similar to like a Cooper Mays. He's going to be better in pass protection than he is in run blocking, just at least from what I've seen so far. But he is a great option and just adds a whole lot of depth to this offensive line in general to have a veteran like this. Now, onto the left guard, I've got Andre Carrick backing up Shem Umarov. And the reason I have him playing over here at left guard is because I think that he's a little bit more of or a little bit better pass blocker than Jackson Lampley, who I have as the backup at right guard. I think that Jackson Lampley is going to be a little bit better in run blocking. Now, I could kind of have this backwards, but either way, right, like they're pretty much even. I think that Andre Carrick and Jackson Lampley could play either left or right guard. It really does not matter. Now, at center, the backup that I have for now is Vyson Lang. Could it be William Satterwhite? I don't know, just because I've heard that Vyson Lang hasn't been as impressive to the coaching staff as he was to me. Now, I'm not saying that he looked like he was a world beater or that he was ready to start, but he looked to me, just from what I've seen in the orange and white game and throughout all of spring, that, man, I'm not too concerned about him coming in and taking over for Cooper Mays. And I'm not necessarily saying, if Coop gets hurt, but, like if the game is out of hand, we feel comfortable putting Vyson Lang in there to block for Gaston Moore or something like that. And I think that as the season goes on, he's just going to get better and better. So he's a player that I think is going to be a pretty viable option at the backup center position. But a lot of folks are saying that if William Satterwhite gains the weight, gets strong enough, figures out the offense quick enough, he could also be that backup center. So they're kind of fighting for that number 2 spot right there. Now at right tackle, the backup I have is Larry Johnson III. I've been hearing a whole lot of good things about him. And just in, rewatching the orange and white game, I think that he looked pretty solid. I'm not 100% sold on him necessarily. I still think he has a lot of work to do, but he is better than what we maybe had last season, right? Like, just as far as having some good backup tackles, I think that Larry Johnson is maybe, one of the better backup tackles in the entire country, just because you typically don't have the best depth there. But let's not forget that we still have Bennett Warren coming up. He could turn into something. We have no idea over the summer. And I also think, man, that Jeremiah Hurd has looked really good just walking around. So I'm very excited to see how he's going to progress. Also, just to kind of throw this out there, I think that our freshmen look really, really good as a whole. The entire unit, they all have been impressive to me. And obviously, we still have Trevor Duncan, too. So a whole lot of depth on this offensive line, right? It may not be starting caliber types of depth, but it's not as big of a drop-off really at any position, as you'll find for about 95 to, 98% of the teams around this country. So a lot to be excited about here with our offensive line. And, just in looking at those rankings, right, let's keep in mind that it's not about, what offensive line is better than the other one, because they're not going to be facing one another. It's about what offensive line fits well into their scheme versus the competition that they're going to see every single week. And I just think that because our scheme is so offensive lineman friendly, because we're going to spread the defense out, we're going to get those light boxes. So, it's not going to be as difficult to identify what's going on. Like, the defense pretty much has to dictate, or they pretty much have to like declare what they're in. And it should be pretty easy for us to identify that on our offensive front. So we should be able to pick up blitzes pretty well. Now, I have been just kind of watching some film on NC State. They bring a whole lot of different exotic looks. that one right there is going to, it could be a little bit difficult for us, but with all these veterans, I think that we'll be fine and we should be fine moving forward. Historically for us, y'all, the biggest issue has been with those odd fronts. And I saw us working up against that in spring. So I know that we're trying to get better at it. And we should have it figured out. I think that a lot of that was just because on the interior, we didn't have as much size. But this year, adding Sham Umarov there, 6'7", 330 pounds, now you've got the size. Coop has also gained weight. I think he's up to about, 310, something like that. He's never going to be huge, but he's getting bigger. He's getting stronger. I think that we're going to be able to look really, really good from a pass perspective, from a pass blocking perspective, especially talking about adding a guy like Lance Hurd, who's an absolute dog. But really, the most important thing for me is in run blocking. And I kind of touched on this earlier. The reason I say that is because this offense is going to be very strongly predicated on the run game. It always has been. That's how we, hit those big chunk plays off of play action, right? Because again, we're spreading the entire defense out. We've got a light box. We've got 6 or 7 there. Once the run game picks up, you've got to try to start to dedicate more people to the box. And as you're doing that, now it's play action. Okay, somebody miscommunicated on a back half with the defense that's already light. And now we've got guys like Chris Brazzell, Dante Thornton, Squirrel White, obviously Brew McCoy, Mike Matthews, Braylon Staley, all those guys running wide open. Okay, I'm not gonna, I don't want to not mention Chaz Nimrod and Caleb Webb as well, but we've got so many tools on the outside, right? We're not even talking about the tight ends yet. But once the running game gets going, once it's a consistent 5, 6, 7 yards a pop, now you've got to start to dedicate more people there because we can do that to you all the way down the field. And I think that we've got some really good running backs to do it. Obviously, Dylan Sampson, so impressive last season. I think he averaged about 5.5 yards per carry. And I mean, I think that he may average about the same this season with even more carries, with a heavier load. And really what I'm looking forward to is seeing a guy like Cam Seldon coming back and getting healthy. What we've been hearing from the insiders is he's already out of his sling. He's already working out, albeit it's non-contact, but he sounds like he's ahead of schedule. So thinking that by that Oklahoma game, we'll have him back. The reason that I really want him back is because he's that bigger body that can just run straight downhill. And the people don't want to tackle. So whenever you're talking about an offensive line with 5 guys that are bullies up front, that want to try to, bulldoze you, right? That want to try to hit you hard, that want to try to ear hole you. And you've got running backs that are going to run with the attitude, man. And then you've got the tempo on top of it. And, the secondaries not being able to hold up because they're having to worry about the run, worry about the pass. It's too much to have to deal with. I think that now that we've got an offensive line with this sort of attitude that's consistent across the board, and really even, at a lot of spots into that 2 deep, man, I think that the sky's the absolute limit for this offense and for this team. I really feel like the offense is going to set the tone for us every single week because we do run that tempo. And it's just a whole lot for us to be excited about. Now, we also still have Deshaun Bishop, who I think is kind of a, Dylan Sampson 2.0, right? He's very similar in his style of play and his body stature, all that type of stuff. But he's another one. I think that he runs a lot harder than his size is, or, than his size says. So he's going to be really good this season. Khalifa Keith, seeing him in that orange and white game, really running hard, really running with that attitude. He might be one of our better pass blockers as well. But I think that because the offensive line, just that front 5, is so good in pass protection that we may not necessarily need to lean too much on our running backs to, stay in there and block a whole lot. Now, they will have to at some point, but I don't think it's going to be as heavy of a dose of that as what we've seen over the past few seasons. And then we still have tight ends as well. All of our tight ends look like they can block. Coach Abe is a former offensive line coach. So we're going to be fine there, y'all. I don't think that pass protection is going to be any issue, and I don't think that run block is going to be any issue either. It's just all going to be about us staying disciplined, us staying together as a team. And this entire squad, this offense, we're talking about averaging, 40-plus points a game. That's what I see us doing this season. But y'all let me know y'all's thoughts down in the comment section. And as always, please make sure to like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, share with your friends, family, and other volunteer fans. We'll see y'all in the next one. Thanks. Peace.